Hi, I'm Pastor Dustin Abbott from Emmanuel Lighthouse United Pentecostal Church, and I am here to give you your Thursday devotion. So glad that you joined us this morning, and I pray that I have something to share with you that will minister to you once again and maybe give you some encouragement and some direction during this time. And so during the midst of all of the various stay-at-home orders across North America, provinces and states, there's obviously been a lot of controversy that has gone on, particularly after the deadlines for all of these orders continue to be extended, again and again. And so as a pushback in our culture begins, one of the most challenged ideas, I would say kind of the sticking point that has been the most controversial, has been the classification of businesses as being either essential or non-essential. It's a distinction that we've not really had to often make, if ever make, in times past, to where we begin to, have this somewhat arbitrary discussion as to what is deemed to be an essential business and what is a non-essential business. So it's been essential for fast food restaurants to be open, but restaurants that are not really set up for takeout, they're determined to be non-essential. And so it's kind of this nebulous distinction that is often made. And I think the very nature that it has often been arbitrary process has created a lot of controversy to come with it. Still others have actually assigned a nefarious motivation to that and looked at it as exposing not only the lack of value that many secular leaders give to religion in general, but also that it's given them a justification to repress religious services. I noted in a letter to our local political representatives, both federal and provincial, that it is hard to not perceive it as a slap in the face as the pastor of a church when churches are deemed to be non-essential while things like liquor stores, pot shops, and lottery sales have been deemed essential. And it seems a pretty incredible contradiction, as we'll explore more in just a moment. The argument goes, or that's been made, at least for the booze and the pot, is that people are addicted and that withdrawal could be very dangerous. Of course, that's a fairly shallow argument, since people are experiencing withdrawal from any number of things that are ordinarily a part of their life, but they have been asked to do without during these extreme times. Even worse is that this ignores the mountain of evidence that shows how destructive drugs and alcohol are to families, to mental health, and even physical health. For example, marijuana increases your risk of respiratory conditions, kind of like COVID-19. In fact, there is a terrible spike in domestic violence instances right now. Suicide hotlines are reporting a 1,000% spike during this isolation period. And of course, things like alcohol and marijuana are depressants, meaning that while people have a temporary buzz or high, a temporary mood elevation, but once that fades, feelings of despondency and loneliness increase, because all it is medicating pain temporarily. It is not solving anything. Escaping reality via medicating your pain eventually just makes you feel worse because you've never actually dealt with anything. Worse still is that marijuana use impairs cognitive function and brain development. In fact, on average, the loss of IQ, measurable IQ in young people, is about 8 points. And that damage that is done is often not restored during adult and later on brain development. It can cause breathing problems, increased heart rate. It damages fetal and baby development. It contributes to paranoia and worsening symptoms in other mental health conditions like schizophrenia. Studies find that frequent marijuana users report lower life satisfaction, poorer physical and mental health, more relation problems, and less academic and career success. My point is that study after study have shown that this essential use is actually something that impairs life and causes a lot of life dissatisfaction and physical and mental vulnerabilities that develop as a part of it. Contrast that with the fact that study after study, we're not talking about hundreds of studies at this point that have found the same thing, but we're talking about thousands. I guess they keep doing them hoping to get a different answer. But study upon study has shown that going to church is good for you. An article following up a study from Vanderbilt University last year, 2019, started by saying that the latest in a long line of studies, now numbering in the hundreds, if not thousands, shows that church attendance is good for your health. Let me give you just a few of the areas where studies have shown that people that go to church, not occasionally, but regularly, at least once a week, people that go to church every week are less likely to experience anxiety. They are much more likely to feel hopeful and optimistic about the future. They are half as likely as those without faith to feel lonely and isolated. They live longer, about 3 years on average. They sleep better. They are at lower risk for depression and suicide. They have more stable, happy, and sexually satisfying marriages. They have lower blood pressure. They have boosted immune systems. Seems like that could be important right now. They have a larger and healthier social circle and a greater support system. They do better in school. They are happier in general. They feel more connected not only with God, but with others. They have a lower risk of cardiovascular disease and cancer. That is but some of the benefits that studies have found come from regularly going to church. So, which of these was essential again? Now, let's you and I resolve right now to never ever take church attendance for granted. When we can resume physical services, let's rejoice, let's celebrate, not only for religious liberty, but also for the fact that God has designed worship of Him for our benefit, not Him. Study after study has shown that when we give God something, we actually get greater things in return. But I wanted to do more today than just push back on the notion that churches are unessential, which, by the way, could not be further from the truth. I unequivocally reject the notion that churches are non-essential. But I did want to talk to you about the word essential. It means absolutely necessary, extremely important. Let me read to you some words from Jesus today. This is found in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 13 through 16. It says, "You are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its flavor, how shall it be seasoned? It is then good for nothing but to be thrown out and trampled underfoot by men. You are the light of the world. A city that is set on a hill cannot be hidden, nor do they light a lamp and put it under a basket, but on a lampstand, and it gives light to all who are in the house. Let your light so shine before men that they may see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven." Jesus is challenging believers to be essential. In the words of Jesus, our world is a bland, homogeneous place which is growing worse in that aspect all the time. We are seeing a broad attack on free speech, and there are more and more things that are just not socially acceptable to say, even if they happen to be true. There's a lot of things that the Bible teaches that have been culturally a part of our nation since its very foundation that all of a sudden are forbidden to mention or to reference. Christians take a lot of heat and even persecution for pushing back against the world's narrative. But Jesus says our purpose is to be countercultural. We are to be salt in the midst of a bland world. And so if there is no distinctiveness in our flavor, if there is nothing different about us than the world, we become non-essential. If salt does not add anything to a particular meal, if it doesn't have anything savory to it, then what's its purpose? Jesus says it has no value. Churches that just follow cultural trends quickly do become non-essential. And we can tell that because people stop going. The reason why so many churches are dying is because they have lost the flavor of their salt. They no longer add anything distinctive to the world. They simply puppet and mirror all of the attitudes and the conventions of culture. And if a church does not add anything distinct, anything essential, People stop going. We are to be the light of the world, a city that is set on a hill. Our world has become much darker very, very quickly. But while we lament the misfortune that has come upon the world, people that are suffering, people that are dying, we also need to recognize that this is an opportunity for the light of the gospel to shine even brighter. A unique thing about light is that the darker it is, the more that a light stands out. We are more essential now than what we have ever been. And so if we hide our light in this moment, we do become non-essential. A covered light in a dark world is pointless. If we are not shining a light in the midst of a world full of darkness, then we have no reason to exist. And so this isn't a time to be private about our faith. This is time to be essential. You are surrounded by people that, may be following you, looking at you on social media, people that looked at you from your workplace and from your job and even family members. And sometimes we are so concerned with being diplomatic that we miss the opportunities that we have to really make a difference, to make a stand, to shine a light in the midst of a dark place. There are many, many desperately hurting people right now that are looking for answers, and they're not getting those answers from politicians or from studies or from medical professionals. They're not getting it from, their addictions, trying to medicate their pain. They're not getting the answers from the shows that they're binge watching as they try to find some solace in the midst of darkness. There are people that are looking for real answers, and this is your moment to be essential, to be a beacon, a lighthouse. The name of our church is Emmanuel Lighthouse. Emmanuel means God with us, and lighthouse represents the fact that we are trying to shine the light of God to a world of darkness. There's a lot of people stumbling in darkness right now, and if you hide your light under a bushel, like Jesus said, then you are non-essential. You are no longer making a difference in the world. So I want to challenge you today, be essential. Our government may have labeled you or your church assembly as non-essential, but you and I know better than that when it comes to the church. But what about you? Are you essential right now? Are you making a difference in your community? Even though you might be limited and having to reinvent the methods that you're using. Hey, that's what I'm doing right now. I'm taking an opportunity to share some truth, to share God's word, and to touch lives and to make a difference. I'm trying to be essential right now to our community. I want to challenge you to do the same. Let's be essential. Let's make a difference. God bless you today.